Perfect. All right, so we got the recording going. I know it actually says your name down there in the bottom left is info@thetradingbook.com,
Yeah, I
but
know.
I know you have a hyphenated name, Anne Marie. Do you go
Yes.
by one or the
Anne
other, or do you
Marie.
go by both?
Yeah, I go by
Okay,
Anne Marie. Yeah.
awesome.
And my last name is Latvian, and so everybody has a really tough time with
Yeah, I was
it.
just going to ask about it.
Yeah, it's band, like rubber band or marching band or whatever. The
What's
I and the Y are silent.
what's the origin of that?
Latvian.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's
Man, you don't
Latvian.
run into a lot of folks,
No.
especially like
Yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then I didn't expect to go down this rabbit hole, but I got to ask,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
were your folks from there or grandparents from there? I'm curious how you ended up
Yes.
where you're at
We
now.
had really, that name is 4 generations back, and
Okay,
then so we've just had a lot of males in the family that
got it.
the name came down, but we're really Eastern European and Mediterranean,
Okay,
right? And so we are a little bit of, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some Turkish floating around in there, but we haven't done, 23andMe or
oh, right.
Ancestry.com yet to figure
Okay,
that out. Just, yeah.
had to ask. That's
Yeah,
really unique.
absolutely.
You don't run into
Yeah,
a lot of
not too many
folks.
Latvians. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I'm primarily German and Polish. We're a dime a dozen. You can't find you
Well, it
throw.
depends where you are.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I'm thinking you throw a rock, you're gonna hit one. But anytime I find people from different areas, I like to learn a little bit about it. So thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
And then otherwise, thank you for coming on and chatting with us for a little bit,
Yeah.
and welcome to the channel. So you and I were doing a little bit of just level setting before we started the recording, just talking about kind of the purpose of things and whatnot. And just to recap, the idea is just to have a conversation to explore mostly you and kind of your approach to the markets and trading. This way, whoever's watching the videos, they have the ability to just see some different perspectives. And I think that that's really powerful as folks are trying to figure out or even
Yeah.
redefine, their approach to trading. So if you don't mind, I would love to start there and just get a,
Sure.
broad understanding of, pretty much when you started trading, what got you into it.
You know, um, we're a family of business owners, and so no, really, maybe we've had two people work for other people, but
Okay.
most of us have been just business owners for a lot of generations. And I'd had a couple of companies. I started as a neuroscience researcher, but
Okay.
that doesn't pay very much because you're, low man on the totem pole. And all I
Right.
had was my background work in statistics. And so I actually took a hard left turn and went into recruiting technical people like myself, statisticians, neuroscientists, and
Okay.
then that moved into programmers and that IT space. And so I had a recruiting company for 14 years, and I really was very tired of always being on and in front of people all the
Yep.
time and in a space of convincing someone to
Right.
consider your options, and then somebody flaking out, or you know somebody popping positive with a cocaine screen. Wait, did you know that? So, all those sorts of things that happen out of the blue. I was just very tired. It's
Right.
an exhausting place to work. But I learned a lot about people, a lot.
I
And
bet.
so that combined with my statistics and my background in um, behavioral mathematics, I just said, you know what, I want to do something different. My husband said, hey, why don't you look at this? Let's go check this out. And so we saw a trading seminar. I can't even remember where it was. It's been so long ago, 2005. And I thought to myself, how hard could this be? Because, of course, everything was in hindsight. And they were
Right.
drawing the little pictures, and they said, no, this is where you would buy and this is where you would sell. And I thought, man, even a monkey could do this.
Sure.
I'm perfect. So I said to myself, I will take uh, all the money that I've been saving and working with having a business for 14 years, and I'm going to just absolutely go straight into the market. And I can do this. I can do anything, right? A lot of confidence in myself. Lost millions of dollars because I figured out that it's not as easy. And that's why they have the pyramid of people on the top and people on the bottom. It's really fat on the bottom, really skinny on the top. And so I I really spent a couple of years failing abysmally.
Mm.
And then I stepped back and I tried to figure out, wait, what do you know to be true? What is anecdotal and what is statistically significant? And what I found out through the years is most of the stuff that we think about in terms of giving us direction, it's anecdotal. And by that I mean, it's the closest thing that you can pick up and go, oh, you know what? The last 2 times I saw that this happened.
Right.
And so obviously that's the relationship. One of the best books that I ever read was the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel
Oh, I
Kahneman.
love that book.
Wasn't
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
fantastic?
My fiance, she actually turned me on to it. And
So
she was reading
good.
it and I checked it out. It is a good book.
It is so, so good.
Yeah.
But it made me see that those two systems, the fast thinking system and the slow thinking system, constantly, I could see it warring for me personally,
Right.
where I would want to jump to the quick answer because we're rewarded for quick answers in
Yep.
society in general. Slow answers, we normally have those folks in a room off by themselves and they do that hard crunching data for us, but it's very difficult for us to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and not want to go 1, 2, 5
Right.
because we want to jump to the end of everything
Yep.
because we want to get to a solution. Our mind, another really great neuroscientist is a guy named David Eagleman, and he's a professor out of the University of Texas at Houston.
Okay.
And he does a lot of neuroscience work. And he says, listen, the brain does not like anything that's not solid.
Mm.
So you can look at a landscape and your brain will actually only see, your mind will only connect 2 or 3 things, and your brain fills in the rest with whatever else it thinks ought to be back there.
Right.
And so we have this tendency to believe that we're seeing a full picture in the moment in time. So when after the fact we go there and we go, why didn't I see that? It could be that your brain never saw it in the first place. It just
Right.
glossed over that edge.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. Um, have you read that quick little book called The Invisible Gorilla?
Mm-mm. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw the video on it, but yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
The book was really about how much the brain can miss when
Right.
it's not paying attention to a specific thing, and how eyewitness testimony is like the worst testimony
Right. Right.
ever. And so that notion of all of that started making me think, wait a second, I'm looking at a landscape in real time, making decisions in that real time space, and then after the fact, because everything is static and not dynamic, it's no longer moving, my brain says, oh, well, obviously this must have been there then, and I should have seen this, and this is what I need to do. And so they're really two completely disconnected systems.
Right.
And when you're an active day trader like me, I was just losing gobs of money before my husband said to me, I think you should stop because I'm not really sure you know what you're doing.
Right.
Which, you know, my best and greatest confidant is my husband. And so when he said that to me, I was vastly offended.
Right.
But it was absolutely true.
Right.
Absolutely true. And it sent me on that journey of pulling in all the things I'd learned about how people were from 14 years in the recruiting business, and then pulling all the mathematics of, hey, how do you actually solve a problem? You go 1, 2, 3, 4, and where the area is gray, what you do is have a series of if-then statements, right?
Right. Right.
So that's how I started looking at the market. And one of the most fabulous things I ever read was the biography of John Boyd, who was the
The
colonel.
OODA loop. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
and the OODA loop is a part of my everyday motion.
You got to be a
I,
Marine then, because that's like one of our central principles is
you
the OODA
know,
loop.
Marines were the only people that showed up to his funeral.
Yep.
Nobody from the Air Force did. So I just love the guy because he just, I mean, the focal strength to make something so incredibly complex just come down into these tight things that go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then stop and make sure you go through, hey, you've observed, but did you actually orient? And that's
Right.
what we don't do. We observe all the time, but it's that orientation that gives us trouble. Oh, we just crossed over the 50. Yeah, well, that's great. Is that 50 trending up or down? Is the overall motion of the market coming off of a deep support or a hard resistance? There are things that will shift what the cross of that 50 will mean. And so for me, it always comes back to, listen, can you see what the players are doing? If you can't tell what the players are doing, you better sit on your hands. Because the number one thing for me is I'll think to myself, all right, here's what you're thinking. You're thinking that when it gets to here, a bunch of sellers are going to come in. And if they come in, then it's going to drive it down to this level of support, and you'll be able to turn around and move back up with the direction of the overall trend. And so I used to plan everything out and then take the trade and then go, what happened? Because I was never thinking about my opponent. What was the other side of the equation doing to circumvent my path to where it was that I was going? And so for me, I've stopped looking at the market in terms of indicators, but more of, okay, a lot of traders accomplished X today. Like for instance, in the futures, we had a support edge that really came down and tested hard. Well, all the sellers are done because they've said, hey, that was our major target. We went in and this was our objective. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to hit these and we get to here and it's going to be mission accomplished. We're out of there, right? And so when that happens, the balance will shift between the buyers gaining more force because the sellers have accomplished their goal. They're headed back up the hill to find the next resistance spot that they can do it again. And so for me, it's always about the game of the storyboard of players as opposed to look at this crossing this, look at that crossing that. That storyboard helps me synthesize much more accurately than simply looking at a group of technicals or just looking at price.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's definitely interesting. And you started dovetailing kind of into another topic I want to hit. Before I do that, you talked about your start, and it's fascinating, I think, because you started with a different paradigm than most folks, specifically on my channel, which is you started with capital that you had built from over a decade of running your own business. Whereas,
Yes.
most folks that I end up talking to, they're starting with nothing, and they're trying to save. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to explore that paradigm just a little bit because I think it's really unique. So one of the things I would be really curious to understand is, you went to that trading seminar, you decided that you wanted to give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
When you first started trading, what was your general approach, if you could just summarize it. I don't need specifics or anything.
Wow. Um, I would, I was sort of like a cocker spaniel looking at a bunch of birds outside the window.
Sure.
And so it was, oh, I'll try that. Oh, I'll try this. Oh, I'll
Okay.
try that. And so, although I thought I had a strategy, I really didn't,
Right.
right? I did not approach the market in a systematic way. I thought about the market, and I really only realized it in hindsight, but I thought about the market as a little bit of a slot machine.
Sure.
I thought, hey, this guy's talking about this, and I love the option space. I think options will turn um, a flat surface into a fully three-dimensional topology. You can see all the landscape and just everything, and you can move and manipulate gears. Absolutely loved it. And so I began playing with options, not realizing how much damage you can do to yourself. See, because I had a lot of cash.
Right.
So when you have a lot of cash, you lose some of it and you go, well, that stinks, but it's okay. I got it.
Right.
And then it happens again and you go, that's terrible, but I got it. And you almost, you forget how long it took to put it away, which was a travesty, right? Because it
Right.
took me 18 months to lose millions of dollars and 6 years
Right.
to get back to break even. So it was, I wouldn't recommend it to a single soul, frankly, right? Truly, I was just as uh, loose with my risk as, say, the person who comes in with $1,000 and says, hey, I want to turn this into $2,000 by the end of the month. I'm like, well, good luck with that one.
Right.
But not that it can't happen. But people forget
Love
that
it.
risk and reward is on a thread.
Intimately
And
tied.
yes. And so when you look at those things and you go, okay, well, I want my reward to be this, well, your risk is not only going to expand by that same amount, but by even more. And so, the thing so what I did poorly was I overestimated my ability. I overestimated the knowledge that I thought I had. I overestimated the fact that I thought my intellect could take me through the emotional space. Listen, there's not a worse gut punch than really studying and putting a position in and it going absolutely sideways.
Right.
And so that sort of, all of that, if I could build a list of please don't do this, it would be the first 18 months of my career and every single thing I did. The only thing I've never done is going all in on margin, or I probably wouldn't be here today, right?
Right.
I stopped with enough capital that I didn't blow anything up. And so I could go, all right, start over. And I would start and go, okay, what is it that you know to be true? What simple things can you look at and go, okay, when this happens, and the probability of this happening is higher based on X. And so everything, I went right back to my statistical background and said, let's just look at this as a game of cards, a game of probabilities, a game of dice rolling, and just take a look at these correlations, not causations, but correlations, and work from that. And so that really has been my bread and butter. It's what's allowed me to stay in and stay green and continually trend up. The biggest thing that's happening right now in the markets, though, is there's so much intraday volatility that even if you know where the cycles are going to run, if you don't get in at just the right spot, you're going to sit on a heavy bit of risk.
Sure.
And so making my cycles just a little bit smaller these days, because I think the market is different than I've ever seen it.
It's funny. So as you were kind of sharing some of that, I start to get a kick out of these segments because for folks that have done this a long time, you start to hear a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
And it's fun because you and I have never talked before.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that you were just talking about is stuff that I talk about, and pretty much everybody that's come on the channel so far has talked about risk and reward, their relationship,
Yes.
things like that. And one of the things that I also found interesting is, when you were sharing a little bit about your original approach, where it was just kind of like shotgun blast, all over the place,
Yes.
looking at different things.
Yes.
I find that very interesting because I think for just about all of us, because I started with like no money. And
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of us that first starting out, it's like we were doing the same exact thing, just with less money.
Yeah.
And you kind of hit on that as well with the $1,000 to $2,000 example.
Yeah.
So I think that it's interesting to hear you say that. Now, the one thing I would be really interested to learn about is obviously you had your trade logs, or your records,
Yes.
whatever,
Uh-huh.
and then at some point your husband's the one that said, well, maybe we should shift gears a little bit and try something
Yeah.
different. I'm curious, like, what was the aha moment for you where you started to like regain your confidence after you realized that, okay, what I'm doing right now is not working, so let me
Right.
try something new? When did that like click for you?
The clicking, it's that tumbler that keeps going and going, because there's a click and then you go, oh wait, I think I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I don't really have it.
Yep.
And then oh, this is it. Okay, no,
Yeah,
not
not it.
exactly. So it's sort of a plateau event. I'll tell you what made me and my husband say, hold the phone, you've got to pump the brakes here. I was trading earnings into, they make the Da Vinci machine. What is their name? Crud. Anyways, starts with an I. Anyway, so I'm trading this, and I will
Intuitive
remember it. This,
surgical.
yes, that's it. ISRG. Thank you.
I know
Okay,
I just had to sit for a minute.
okay. So, this was really the worst trade of my trading career. I went into earnings. Everybody was like, "Oh, it's great." I mean, I even called the investor, um, the investor relations line there,
Got
and
it.
I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is gonna be great. I'm ready for it." I am so heavy, and I'm short puts and long calls in a synthetic long,
Mm-hmm.
and they opened up $100 a share lower. And so literally it's that deer in the headlights. And then I couldn't move, and the whole day, and then it was the end of the week, and I was talking to my husband, and he was like, yeah, this is not going well. And so that made me go, okay, you got to stop. And
Right.
so the aha moments were really aha, face the fact, look at yourself in the mirror and go, you think you know what's going on, but you don't really know what's going on, or you'd have different results.
I think every single one of us has gone through that. I just
Right?
wanted to identify with you there because yes.
Absolutely. And so that was the first thing. And then I said, all right, you got to trim this down. And one, you've got to figure out what I had broken all my emotional capital. I had no emotional capital left, meaning I was so broken spirited that I actually had to turn my sound off on my machine, because if I heard the ding, it was like Pavlov's dog. I was
Yep.
like, oh, this is going to be bad,
Yep.
right? So I literally turned it off. Even today, so many years later, I still do not have sound on
That's
my
funny.
machine for telling me a trade. I will have a flashing pop-up,
Uh-huh.
but no
But not the
sound.
sound. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, I just
I find
can't.
that interesting.
Yeah, very, very, very far back, but I don't
Yeah.
want to hear it again. So that, and then I said to myself, all right, just because you haven't done this right doesn't mean that you can't find out the right way to do it. Because,
Right.
you know, I am one of those never say die people. And honestly, to have grit and perseverance and be, oh, I love the doggo, love the doggo.
I I was he's just sitting there chewing my hand, so
Oh
he ended up
man, they're
popping up.
so great. So great. So if you don't have that grit and the market beats you up, because it will beat you up, even when you get good, it'll still beat you up, right?
Right.
It's sort of like being a great golfer. You're still going to shank it. You're
Right.
still going to kick it in the sand. It's how you triage yourself out of that that makes you the expert. How do you take that, whoa, this thing is going to be bad. What do I do right now to fix it? That's where that expertise comes from. And so you're always going to be battling that sense of, am I really good enough? Is this, do I really know what this is? And then, you know, a lot of us need to feel like we can be successful, but there are anchors in the back, right? Little childhood skycab baggage
Right.
that will be, you know, you're not good enough, you're not. And so you've got to look at yourself in the mirror. And here's the great thing, if you've literally ever done this, look in the mirror and try to tell yourself a lie. You can't. You can lie, but the solar plexus will go, and you'll know, okay, in this whole body, this is a lie. I know this is a lie. So
Right.
if you can look at yourself in the mirror and say exactly what you are without using language that is deriding or demeaning, and say, okay, what you know is that you can put the work in.
Right.
If you've got a good work ethic and you work and work and work, but work smart, you're going to get to where you want to go. You just have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, today, I'm going to work smart. And
Yeah.
believe it and do it.
And I think that you hit a really important point that I also think it's really just it's irreplaceable in people's progression as a trader, where we go through that phase where you feel like you know what you're doing, and
Yes.
then you start to come across signs that you know you might not have the same
Yeah.
handle that you think you do. And I love, you know, your discussion just kind of about that self-analysis,
Yes.
because it's one of my favorite things to do is just kind of read through different white papers and research on the trading community at large. I find it very interesting. And
I
one
haven't
of the
ever read anything like that. I would really like to.
oh yeah, I literally can send you a ton. Actually,
Yes.
Google has a super cool feature where you can literally search white papers, collegiate articles, stuff like that on a topic that you want. So it's
Right.
literally an entire repository of different research that different folks have done on different aspects of trading. And one of the most common pieces, it's exactly something I'm sure you know exists, where you know we want to really focus on the positive events and
Yeah.
we kind of want to pretend the negative event didn't happen, and
Right.
then that leads to kind of that sustained space of losing.
Right.
um, and I really identify with that self-analysis portion. That's
Yeah.
one of the main things I think goes into being a long-term trader, is the ability to kind of agnostically take a look at what you're doing and
Yes.
be honest with yourself, because
Yeah.
otherwise, I like to say it a lot, the whole trading thing, it's a 1v1 sort of sport. It's you versus yourself. So
Yes,
you can lie all you want. That's fine, but money's not going to grow from that.
that's
So
exactly
yeah,
right.
you kind of
That's
have to get the
exactly right.
kind of have to get the ego out of the way early so that you can focus more on the growth.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the hard thing, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
please. No, no, no.
I think the hard thing for us is to look at the difficult things or the things that we aren't doing right and not judge ourselves.
Mm,
The judging event creates an internal space of mental derision. You
mm-hmm.
idiot, you moron, you what the heck were you looking at? That sort of thing. If you say to yourself, all right, if my goal is always self-improvement, and we know that trading makes us better human beings, right?
Sure.
It does, because it makes us look at ourselves and go, why did you just do that?
Yep.
And so if you can look at yourself without judgment and say, listen, this you did incorrectly. Let's look at why.
Right.
And you strip that judgment finger pointing thing that we have a tendency to do because we're just terrible to ourselves. And my philosophy is always, I tell my kids all the time, listen, do your best not to have negative self-talk, because there's going to be somebody out there that is going to they can't wait to knock you off your game.
Yep.
Don't you be doing it.
Yeah.
Let them do it, you don't do it. And so, and I talk a big game, I will say, but I still say to myself, you were just an idiot right there. But the question is, when you get back at the end of the day and you do the homework, which is super important, you got to do that homework. A lot of us do not like the homework part of trading, but it's sort of like being a professional athlete and never going to the practice field.
I make that exact parallel all the time. I literally just quoted Ronnie Coleman the other day. You know, he has that. I love this saying. I like to work out, and his saying is, you know, everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but nobody want to lift this heavy ass weight. It's the same thing. Everybody's
Yeah,
ready to make a buck,
yeah,
but nobody wants to put in the work to do it. I love
yeah. It's absolutely true. And so, because it's not exciting,
Nope.
it's boring to
Nope.
look over that sort of stuff. But I got to tell you, it pays off in spades. And
Mm-hmm.
so, when you think to yourself, what's my edge? We all have to have that edge, because we are trading against the smartest people and the fastest machines in the world. And so we have to respect our opponents
Yep.
in terms of saying, all right, what are you going to have up your sleeve here that I'm going to see, and I'm going to be able, because I have a skiff and you've got a battleship, I can move a lot faster than you.
Right.
And that's going to be my edge. And so if I'm looking at that and I go, what is that edge? The biggest part of it is going to be your mental strength in terms of saying, all right, have I framed this out to say, if I'm right, then this will happen. If I'm wrong, then this will happen. And if I'm wrong and I see this going to happen, I have a choice in between the gap of, holy cow, I just see that I might be wrong. What's the triage here? Do I cut
Right.
and run? Or do I figure out some sort of hedging event? And most of us have a trading plan, and it goes like this. I'm going to buy here, and my stop is going to be here, and my target's going to be here. And what is that military saying? No plan survives.
First contact. Yeah.
Yes, there we have, right?
Yeah.
That's trading in a snap,
I absolutely
right?
agree.
So we get into that, and we think we have a trading plan because we know our stop, we think we know our entry, and we think we know our target, and that's not a plan at all. The plan
Right.
is, okay, what if you come off the rise and there's a bunch of stuff there that you didn't think you were going to see? So everything is about contingency planning, but at the same time not second guessing.
Right.
There's a difference, right?
I
To
agree.
orient and observe, or to observe and then orient. Orienting doesn't mean second guessing. It means always looking at the landscape and saying, has anything changed to materially affect my initial trajectory
Yep.
in this case?
I love it.
And slow and easy. Slow and easy. I used to throw 50 things of spaghetti at the wall, and whichever ones hit were great. Now I'm much more of a sniper rifle approach, right?
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just uber focused, one or two things, and you know, it's a grind if you do it. The rewards are great,
Hmm.
but the work is intense.
The work is there, yeah.
Yeah.
And you hit on a couple good things that I definitely identify with. One of the main things is you were kind of just talking about, is the idea of just being thoughtful on what you're gonna choose to kind of expose yourself to.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I talk a lot about. And at the end of the day, I think the number one trait of a long-term trader is they're a risk manager. It's got to come first. And
Yes.
like you were talking about with your contingency plans, the two things you mentioned, adding a hedge or exiting the trade, both
Yes.
risk management, just a
Yes.
really, really important
Yeah.
concept for people to kind of get their arms around. And
Yeah.
um, I'm glad you brought those up. Now, we are coming up, we have about 20 minutes left. So,
Mhm.
what I would love to do is dig a little bit more into kind of just your general trading style. What do you
Yeah.
like to do? You know, you can go as far in depth or as not far in depth as you want, but I would love to just learn a little bit more about your approach to the markets.
Sure. I trade the futures because of the leverage.
Yep.
I love the leverage. And leverage works for you when you know what you're doing, and against you when you don't, or you get yourself in a pickle. But I
Yep.
like that. And what I've noticed is, even though I trade intraday several times a day,
Yep.
I always look at the following. I look at, how did this instrument close on the quarter?
Right.
What is the high? What is the low? What's the open? What's the close? How did it close last month? High, low, open, close. And so I'll do everything and I'll map those on my chart. And I will not count overnight trading. So I will put
Okay.
up a chart that only has the regular trading hours on
Right.
it, 9:30 to
Excludes
4.
extended hours. Yep.
Yes. And so that's where the heaviest volume is going to be, except
Sure.
for things like gold and maybe oil once in a while, because those are all traded across the pond also. So when we take a look at that, I will always look at a chart and go, I'll establish prevailing trend
Okay.
and then near-term behavior. So for instance, um, let's pick something that we both might have familiarity with. You pick.
I was gonna say any future. I trade them pretty much
Oh,
daily myself. So yeah.
great. So
Yeah.
let's take a look at the ES.
Okay.
Okay. And so the ES had a spike up into 37.14 or 37.16 a couple of days ago.
Yep.
And that actually was the gamma traders sort of told us what was going on with this. What There's a really side note. There's a very interesting. I'm going to send you some stuff on gamma
Cool.
so that you can see where they're going to pull price to
Oh,
before it
right.
collapses.
Yep.
And so this month it was 3,700.
Hmm.
And I went and looked at the option chains and I said, yeah, but we've got about 3710 to 3715. I see a lot of call action right there. I bet you we stretch over this 3700. And so we put the high in. And so my question as I come into the next day is always the following. Am I seeing strength or weakness relative to the prior date? That means, It's strength if it's up over the close of the prior day. And if you got a toy?
Yeah, I just saw him like pop on. He's just whipping that thing around. Sorry.
Oh no, I do. I absolutely love animals. So we take a look at the strength. The moment it starts losing either the high or the close, we have to think about why.
Right.
Well, why does price lose a level anyway? It means that the pressure of sellers is more than the pressure of buyers. Now, there's this storyboard where people go, for every seller, there's a buyer. Yes, of course, we know that to be true. However, there are sellers that have the ability to sell 5 contracts and sellers that have the ability to sell 5,000 contracts.
Yep.
And so that's what we're looking at from that strength perspective. The moment weakness begins to occur, I will start saying, all right, if the buyers are finished with getting to the top of the range, they'll pull backwards and they'll go, I need to go find a value spot. I don't know where it is, but it might be the prior day's open. It might be the weekly open, but those levels I have plotted on my chart.
Got it.
And so I will simply trade from one stair step to the other. And I'll get in and I'll get out. I used to run cycles where I would go, okay, I know it's going to fade a little bit and then bounce. I'm not really sure where it's going to fade, but I know I've got a fairly good risk threshold. And what's been happening is the volatility expansion from the algos has been brutal. Absolutely. I mean, flying through support levels and not recovering for 2 days, which is,
right. Yeah.
Terrible. Terrible. And so I just moved from the one cycle to the next in the direction of trade. And I'm always thinking, okay, Anne-Marie, if you're right, what are you going to see right after you engage? And if you're wrong, what are you going to see? So you better be looking for where you might be wrong, because that's the stuff that, slaps us when we don't even notice that we don't even know it's coming. And then all of a sudden, bam. And so we have to, you're on high alert looking for something that might tell you the rug might get pulled out from you. Otherwise, you just go slow and easy and you get to where you're going and you get out. My thought is, because we are small retail traders and we're not playing with 9 and 12 zeros, we really want to sit back and say, where can I dash out, grab my piece of cheese, and then head back for cover? And so I used to trade maybe 30, 40, 50 trades a day. Now I do 4.
Okay.
So I've really
and then you
slowed that down.
Do you just size up on those as compared to when you were doing like 30 or 30
Okay,
or 50?
so the way I decide to size up means, have I hit an important support level and I'm coming off of that support level? If I have, I could size up.
Okay.
If I am moving counter trend, I will always be half size.
Got it.
Because you never know with counter trend motion.
Sure.
You don't know if it's gonna, so I don't want to have a great morning, take a counter trend trade in the afternoon, and then end up negative for the day, which has happened to me more times than I care to count.
Sure.
So I'm always looking at, all right, if I'm going in the direction of broad trend, meaning is my VWAP up? Am I moving weekly highs? If all of that is there, I know in very deep support zones, I'm going to be able to add with size to move up the chain. If I've come into resistance and it's heavy resistance, like where all those gamma traders were, I can trade heavy. But otherwise, I will trade small and often, but not very often. My thought is always to push the envelope enough that you feel like you're really having to be fully engaged, but not so much that you've got butterflies in your
Right,
stomach.
that you're stressed out and worried.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
because that what happens from a biological space, what happens is that floods the brain with cortisol,
right,
and cortisol short circuits the prefrontal cortex.
right.
And the prefrontal cortex is where we make all complex decisions. And so I really try to not get myself in that kind of space where my emotions are going to make me click the button when I shouldn't be.
Yep. I think that that's another great point. Do you, when you're kind of doing your daily trades, do you like to trade futures outright, or do you trade options on futures?
I like to trade the futures outright.
Okay.
Um, you know, I don't know why I never picked the futures options. I know there's even more leverage there.
Hmm.
I, I just don't know why I haven't done it.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. It's definitely something that I like to take a look at. If I'm just intraday scalping, I will tend to just trade the future itself, and the main reason there is just liquidity. It's a little easier.
Right. Yeah.
But if I'm looking at any sort of slightly longer term style trade, I'll typically go to options on futures, just for
So,
the really the leverage.
in terms of settlement,
Hmm.
how is the settlement? Does it take longer for the settlement of the futures option versus the future?
Nope. And it depends on, obviously, on what you're trading, what the settlement style is. Cash for,
Right.
the major
Right.
indices that settle to
Mm-hmm.
cash, same.
Right.
And then for the kind of commodities backed products, stuff like that,
Yeah.
it'll just settle to the futures contract itself. And then
Right.
whenever that contract is due to expire,
Right.
then whatever will happen on that underlying contract.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the contract itself.
Yeah. Somebody just said that to me a couple of weeks ago. They were like, why don't you do the options? And I just, listen, I love options.
Me
I
too.
do. I just have not ever, we'll have to chat offline about a couple of those things
Yeah.
because, yeah, I just want to, yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, happy to. I think that they're really cool products. The options on futures, I'm definitely a fan of them. So with our last few minutes here, there's two other questions I wanted to ask you. The first one is, what did you think about the past year?
um, it's certainly one for the record books. For me, I'm a sort of very pragmatic. I
Okay.
think to myself, what can I do to change what's happening here in my personal space, right? Is there anything I can do to affect or influence anything big? And it turns out, no, I, I'm, I can't.
Yep.
And so I have this thought in my mind of, I really can't do anything, so I'm not going to fret about it. I'm going to chill. Somebody wants me to do this, fine. My thought is, especially with a family and that sort of thing, my thought is, can I keep the people around me from spinning up? Because we're all sort of, I don't know, we're a family that's very and so I have to go, wait, can we just calm down? We can, like the the theories, especially my sons, they are just I'm like, wait a second. We can't change any of that. So just don't think about packing a weapons bag and heading off to outer Montana or
Right.
wherever,
Right.
right? And so that really has been my goal for the year. Am I concerned about what I perceive happening? Yes.
Sure.
And so I try to be as liquid as I can be and fluid as I can be, and just not to be mentally locked in a box. So again, I think trading has done that for me. It's
Yeah.
allowed me to go, hey, don't spin up. What are you seeing? What can you influence here? Where is your direct sphere, and what do you need to do in your space? And the rest of it, I'm like, you're just going to see people go guano crazy.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
really are. And you just have to, you gotta roll with it.
Yep. Just gotta watch. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And prepare.
Yep.
Watch and prepare, and not be overly complacent. And so, it's just like sitting in your trade. If you go, you know what, this thing's going to turn around. And then every day it goes lower and lower. You're like, yeah, okay, maybe I ought to think about what I need to do with this trade, right? So we really don't want things like that to happen with us in the real world. So you just prepare, and there are days coming that I think are going to be probably darker than we would want them to be, but you know the sun will rise again, and
That's
those of us that are uh, directed shall prevail.
yeah. I think that's fair. I think
Yeah,
it's how life goes.
yeah,
Um, the last question I wanted to ask you, for at least for me, when I look back at the past year, kind of in general, like you were talking about, I've just seen a bunch of volatility. Not even just
right,
from a trading perspective, just
right. The
literally in life.
world,
Yeah, just in
yes,
life. But then kind of drawing that parallel to trading itself, this last year has been fascinating to me because
yes,
just about everything that I base my decisions on and whatnot, it's all different. This year has been
yes, out the
different.
window.
So
Yeah.
kind of last thing I wanted to ask you is just what were maybe one or two things that you saw throughout this year that were just extremely unique compared to what you've seen in previous years?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it's the stuff, people are talking about it now, but we started seeing it shift maybe towards June, July. How much the option, how much the option space is actually driving the market
Mm,
versus the market driving the option space. That is the most remarkably different thing that I've seen. Um, it's been a very tough year for me because I feel like there are no natural rhythms of ebb and flow that have appeared in times past.
right.
And so there's a lot that I've had to change. But, adapt or die, right?
Yep.
And so the big things that I've seen, the biggest thing is what options are doing to drive the market, because the market maker who is seeing the call options just continually rise, in order for his delta not to be savagely negative, because he's got the other side of that, he's got to go buy the stock. And so that is really driving this motion. Every
Yep.
person I talk to in the options pits are like, I've never seen anything like this. They're buying calls in mass, $200 out of the money in, something like Apple or Tesla or whatever, right? It's just extraordinary motion. And here is the biggest thing: when moves get very fast, it's like blowing a bubble very quickly.
Mm,
It will snap without any notion that it's going to snap.
right.
If you blow a bubble with the bubble gum and you blow it slowly, you can see those edges and you can go, all right, this is
We're
going to
getting
pop.
there. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But it's moving so fast that when it comes, I mean, we're going to get up and it's going to be limit down for days.
Right.
And it's
Right.
just a matter of time. The big thing I just read before I got on this call with you is what's going on with uh, China and the loans and
I
everybody
was just
having to,
reading about that.
yeah, to restructure all the loans.
Yes.
And so the only thing that makes a market crash is illiquidity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing. And so it's going to come. The reason they say, the credit guys are the smartest guys in the room is because they're seeing where people are getting in big trouble and they can hedge in
Right.
that space. And we're going to start having these pockets of illiquidity. And it doesn't matter how much money they print. The more money they print, the less reliable the whole system becomes. And
Right.
so, you
Yep.
know, it's, but these things sometimes can take 15 years to unwind. So, I mean, the 2006, 2007 crisis we had, it started in 1985. So, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe today, maybe tomorrow.
I've been blown away, just the overall move of the market this year, and
Yeah,
kind of like you, in a very similar way. I've been very, very mindful of how much risk I need to put out, and realistically, most months, I would put out the minimum I needed, just kind of in
that's
pursuit of my annual
exactly right. I'm
goal,
the
and
same
that's it.
way.
Yeah,
I'm the
just
same way.
yeah,
Just very small exposure to the market because I'm old, and so I mean, although I want to trade until I die, I don't want to have to trade until I
right,
die,
right.
right? And so how I make money now is just that slow and easy space and say, I would love to pat myself on the back and get a great big home run someplace, but it's just not wise right now. It
Yep.
really is not
And
wise.
like you're talking about with your background with probabilities and statistics, it's just
Yeah,
not, yeah,
it's only a
not
matter of
not
time.
great right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
This was such an enjoyable conversation.
oh,
I'm
this is
so
awesome.
glad I got to talk to you. I
Yeah.
I look forward to keeping in touch some more.
Yeah,
I
that
really
would
do.
be absolutely great. And then
Yeah.
if there's anything that you want to share with the group, if you have any like Instagram handles or Twitter, whatever you like to use, just I'll throw it all in the description. But I'd love to just essentially expose folks to
Yeah.
your approach and whatnot. I
Well,
think
I
it's
thank you
awesome.
very much. I think
Yeah.
it'll be great, and I'll make sure to share the link when this gets through, and have some folks get to hear from you guys. I love the military community that you have there because it's important, right? Um, it's important that they get the chance, and I trade with a couple of my kids. I've taught a couple of them to trade,
Hmm.
and I just think it's exciting to be able to share that information and have people learn from each other in important ways.
It is, yeah. And the thing that gets me with the military folks in general is a lot of them just don't have the natural exposure, right? There's not a lot
Yes,
of traders, especially in
right.
derivatives. But at the end of the day, what I do find is the folks that I do come across, most of them are pretty damn good at it once they get going. They
Yeah,
want to learn, and then they have discipline when they're in their
that's it.
execution.
That
Works
is
great.
it.
Yeah.
It's discipline is all. It is
Yep.
absolutely the anchor to the work.
Yep. I absolutely agree. So it was awesome chatting with you. And
I
then
enjoyed it.
yeah, until next time,
Yes.
yeah, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
All right. Take care.
Take care, Emery.